Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today, by popular demand, we are returning to Andor Season 2. Not only do we have some new comments from Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna, but I also want to focus on one of the most genius details of the entire show. Let's begin with the latter because it's always the small intricacies and connections that make Andor so wonderfully written. There's a major detail you might have missed in Season 2 Episode 9 that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. The reason I didn't is that I got very sick, so I didn't make all the videos I wanted to, but because a lot of you guys are doing rewatches and I did another one last night, now is as good a time as any, so let's get into it. Vel Sartha is one of my favourite characters, and she has one of the most powerful moments of the entirety of Season 2. One single question about one very unique blaster bridges the entire series together. The complete journey we'd been on since Season 1. Near the end of the episode, on Yavin 4, Vel is taking stock of the Rebels' armaments. She notices an insignia on one of the blasters, the Preox Morlana insignia, and she recognizes it, and she asks the new recruits who it belongs to. But the way she formulates the question is really interesting. She doesn't say who does this belong to, she asks who belongs to this. It's a military way of asking, but it's also kind of poetic, isn't it? It makes you realize, in battle, it is the weapon that owns the rebel. Their lives are in its hands. Melshi then emerges and puts his hand up and says, "I believe that's mine." Now this blaster has had quite the journey in both seasons of the show. It began in Season 1. It's the Morlana pistol Cassian steals from Syril on Ferrix. Then he took the blaster to Aldhani, and that is why Vel recognizes it. And then before being arrested and sent to Narkina 5, Cassian stashes the gun away in his apartment on Niamos. When Cassian and Melshi return from the prison, Andor then hands it to Melshi before they separate. It's a crazy detail and a crazy journey for a blaster like this that poetically ties together the entire show. It travelled a long way to arrive at Yavin. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but on Aldhani, the traitor Skeen asked Cassian where he got it from. Skeen notes, "It's Corpo issued," and Cassian responds, "Didn't get a name." It also plays into the one-sided rivalry between Cassian and Syril. Andor didn't even know who he was, but for Syril this guy was his entire obsession. This blaster is an interesting but subtle through line for everything leading up to this moment. In light of the question Cassian asked Syril before his death, "Who are you?" the line from Aldhani, "I didn't catch a name," hits even harder, and callbacks like this really pay off, but I would argue it's the smartest detail of the entire series. And you have to admit, it was great to see Vel channeling a drill sergeant. Who belongs to this? She knows the weapon, so it has primacy in her mind. Because she was one of the few who survived Aldhani, it's actually quite important to her. Such an awesome detail. And so now, my dear friends, on to some Andor updates. So beginning May 29th, which was yesterday, all the way till June 1st, there is the Austin, Texas TV Festival. And Tony Gilroy is a guest, alongside Beau Willimon, and in his interview the showrunner revealed the real reason he thinks Andor was such a success, and the differences between Seasons 1 and 2, the different creative approach he took. According to Tony, the reason Andor is so different to every other Disney Plus Star Wars show is because he was given creative freedom. Disney and Lucasfilm just didn't interfere the way they did on other series like Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi and The Mandalorian. Tony says they barely gave him a single note. The creative freedom he had was insane, unprecedented. It even took him aback. That being said, there was only one thing Disney asked him to change, one amendment, not in Season 2, but at the end of the first season, in Episode 12. As you probably know, in Marva's posthumous speech, she originally didn't say "fight the Empire," she said "f*** the Empire." And Tony now reveals the decision to change it wasn't just his own. Lucasfilm came to him and said, "Can you please not do that? It's inappropriate for Star Wars." And you know guys, I'll be honest, they made the right call on this. Fight the Empire is so much more powerful. It's a direct call to action. The profanity does have an emotional weight to it, but the F word in the Star Wars universe, I'm personally not a fan of that. That being said, Tony Gilroy tried this again for Season 2, and got away with it. Before Mon Mothma's Senate speech, Bail Organa tells her, "Tear the shit out of this place." I won't lie to you guys, I'm pretty surprised Disney allowed this. It is borderline, it's definitely not as strong as the word Marvel was going to use, but it is something very unusual for this universe. They've used words like hell, or when Pelimoto says, "Jeez." But in this scene, maybe Bail Organa should have used a word like, I don't know, criff, or shab, or quackda. Don't worry, I don't think he should have used Bantha Poodoo, that would have been a bit too ridiculous, but it is interesting that in the first season, Disney vetoed Marva's F-bomb, but in season 2 they were fine with what Bail Organa said. It isn't very Star Warsy and I couldn't imagine George Lucas approving something like that, but it did sound pretty badass, didn't it? According to Andor's age rating, which is TV-14, F-words are generally not allowed. There are certain contexts where you are permitted very limited use, and generally they have to be bleeped, whereas the word shizzle is usually fine. Maybe by that point Disney and Lucasfilm were fine with Tony Gilroy going his own direction, but that's the reason Andor was such a success. He was left to his own devices. It's why he says Andor is a show that could never happen again. Andor's production began during a much more hopeful time for the franchise. They were given unlimited budget, free creative reign, and it was greenlit before the low viewership issues, before the controversies of some of the other projects. It was just a very different time to where we are now. I'd like to think Lucasfilm is going to change their ways, listen to the fan reaction to season 2 and take note, but financially speaking, this looks very unlikely. Unfortunately, I think creatives are going to be very closely monitored because the days of Disney Plus taking risks are long gone. You have to remember, Andor was one of the very first Star Wars TV shows announced. It had been spoken about before The Mandalorian. Mando opened the doors for them creatively and in terms of budget, but with everything that's happened since, Lucasfilm is in a very different place. So Tony got very lucky. In theory, you could say they should just give every creative free reign, but that's too much of a gamble. You're not always going to get an Andor out of it. Now, Tony Gilroy was very happy after fan reactions to season 1. He was really chuffed, fans were loving it, finally a mature, complex Star Wars series. But he also took a lot of criticisms to heart, notably that the series is a slow burn. And he said, that's the reason season 2 kicks off with the TIE Avenger episode. He wanted everyone to think this was going to be more of the same, but then bam, Cassian steals a ship. I never really got the criticism it was a slow burn. It is written in a more traditional style of television, where you have to pay attention to every line spoken, every character on screen, but it makes it worth it. It makes you more invested. So when big things happen, when there's a major death, or a battle, or a massacre, or a monologue, it's more impactful. The payoffs are sweeter. It's almost like, as a viewer, you're being rewarded. You did the homework. And the best thing about Andor is that it doesn't overstay its welcome. 2 seasons was perfect. The original plan was 5, but that might have felt a bit dragged out. And logistically speaking, as Tony acknowledges, by time season 5 came out, the transition to Rogue One would make no sense. Diego Luna would be so much older. So just a few updates from the showrunner himself. But now, my dear friends, one final piece of Andor news to finish with. Diego Luna speaks about the character's goodbye. The hug with Jyn Erso in Rogue One. The other day, Tony Gilroy commented on it, but now the man himself, Cassian Andor, opened up about it, and he said this: the meaning of the hug goes beyond what you're thinking. They're saying goodbye to everything, and what they find in each other is strength. But with the release of Andor, the audience's perspective will change. Now you know the significance of what this goodbye means, and the life he's leaving behind, which includes Bix and their child. So in many ways, it's even more tragic. But with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts on all of today's Andor updates in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this video? If you did, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.